Hello, and thank you everyone for being with us today. Before we start, I want to quickly let you know that today's session, as you have already probably seen, will be conducted in English. However, we have synchronous translation into Georgian, and to choose the Georgian language, please use the globe button in the bottom right corner of the screen and follow the instructions there. I hope that if you have not already, you will find this magic button soon, and then we can get started then. I am Katie Chachriani from Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College at Arizona State University. We're thrilled to welcome you once again to the presentation about ASU teacher preparation programs. This series of presentations is conducted as part of the USAID Educating the Future activity in Georgia, and it is implemented by Chemonics International with Arizona State University, One World Network of Schools, and also University of Georgia. So for those of you who joined us at our previous presentation, you remember that our guest, Dr. Abby Brown, discussed and provided the general overview of the teacher preparation programs at ASU. And by the way, when you hear this abbreviation ASU, it stands for Arizona State University. So this presentation will be about student field experiences, or student practicums, as we often call in Georgia too. With this, I would like to welcome and to introduce our presenters today. If we can move to the next slide, please. Irina. So our first presenter is Ms. Tina Flesher. Ms. Flesher is a clinical associate professor and division strategist at the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. She has expertise in gifted education, higher level thinking skills, classroom differentiation, and Ms. Flesher has shared her insights and experience at numerous conferences and workshops at the national, local, and international level. Ms. Flesher is also a clinical associate professor at Teachers College, and she has been teaching diverse range of courses, including but not limited to structured English immersion, language and literacy, also science in elementary schools, and various student teaching courses. And now our second presenter, Ms. Sarah Hernandez-Byrne. Ms. Byrne serves as an Assistant Division Director at Professional Education Services at Teachers College, and in her role, she oversees a team of placement coordinators responsible for securing placements for approximately 1,500 students. Before joining ASU, Ms. Hernandez-Byrne was an English language teacher, and it's also very interesting that she taught for Teach for America program. So welcome our presenters, and thank you for being here. Next slide, please. I want to briefly tell you what today's presentation is going to be about. Very interesting topics. I think, first of all, our presenters will talk about the goals and objectives of field experiences at ASU. Also, they will explain what types of field experiences we have, what is the duration and frequency of those programs, how the field experience is aligned with the coursework, one of the interesting topics, also the roles and responsibilities of the different stakeholders engaged in this process, the nature of mentorship, types of collaboration between teachers and student teachers. Sarah and Tina will also talk about how ASU supports the mentor teachers. And here I will take this opportunity and I will briefly explain that because in Georgia, mentor teacher is used in a different context. Here at Arizona State University, when we say mentor teacher, this would refer to the teacher who hosts ASU students in their classrooms. Of course, a very important topic also for running programs as big as this is about logistics and organizational issues. very important and interesting also is what are the benefits of these programs for schools and for teachers, obviously for K-12 students as well. Another addition here from my side is that when Sarah and Tina talk, you will hear school districts quite often, which is a little different from what we have in Georgia, but school districts would be similar to what we have education resource centers. And in the US, school districts work very closely with schools. So yeah, this name will come up very often in this presentation. And finally, there will be discussion of some common challenges which exist in the implementation of these programs. Before I hand over to our presenters, here are some quick housekeeping notes. Again, let me remind you about this magic button, the globe button, which will help you to switch to the Georgian language if you don't want to listen to the presentation in English. Also, our session is planned for 1 hour. We'll have about 35 minutes for the presentation itself, and then this gives us another 15 minutes for questions and answers. For the questions, please send your questions to the chat, and I and my colleagues will monitor this and ask the questions to our presenters on your behalf. And please be informed that today's presentation is being recorded, and then it will be uploaded and shared with everyone who is interested to listen to it. Finally, I want to take this opportunity and thank our team, Cumonix team, and ASU team in Tbilisi, Georgia, who have been helping, and without their help, this presentation now would not be possible. Now, again, big welcome to our presenters, Tina and Sarah. Many thanks for being with us today, and please, the stage is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Ketty, for that introduction. So I'm going to jump right into our presentation. The first slide that you'll see is the objectives and goals that we have for our students in our field experiences. So we focus on two main goals, which is providing opportunities for students to apply the theory that they are learning in the classrooms into actual practice. And the overarching goal is just training high quality educators to be ready for whatever their teaching position is in the workforce. So on the next slide, you'll hear from both of us. Sarah and I are going to just kind of jump to each of our expertise areas. So Sarah is going to start us off with the observation, but we're just going to be talking about the types of field experiences that we offer, the duration, and the frequency.
Thank you, Tina. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Hernandez-Byrne. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's wonderful to be here. I am a former teacher, and so this is one of my favorite topics. I know as an educator that in order to get really good at teaching, you actually have to practice teaching. And so that's why I think these practicums are so important. To talk about our observation placements, these are placements that are only available to our undergraduate students. And typically they are taking place during the student's second year. There are 2 observation placements, one in each semester. And these are actually the newest types of placements that we do. They're a couple of years old. And the idea behind them is for students to get into the classroom sooner. And so instead of students having to wait until typically their 3rd year, we thought it was important for students to actually get into classrooms and schools and start working with students sooner. So for these placements, they truly are observations. Students are going in and they are looking for how teachers are managing their classroom. They can actually go into any classroom setting. It doesn't have to match their program, which is not the case for the other placements. And these placements are 20 hours total over the course of a semester. They consist of 4 different visits to the school site at about 5 hours each. The student does not do any evaluation for this placement. They are producing a time card to indicate that they've actually attended the placement. And for mentor teachers for these kinds of placements, they actually only need 1 year of their teaching completed before they can host a student. And I'll send it over to Tina.
Hi, it's Tina again. So the internships, that is where we start having the students go and partnership with a classroom at a deeper level. And this will typically start around their junior year of college. We call them semesters 5 through 7. The internship courses, they actually take a college course along with the placement. So the course that they have is just a 1-credit class, and there's very specific, clear expectations and criteria for them to perform in the classroom. We ask them to complete anywhere between 45 to 75 hours, which will equate to about a half a day or a full day each week. And in the internship classrooms, we ask that they keep a time card so that they can log all of these hours. And then it spreads over a 15-week semester. We ask that they are actually practicing teaching in some of these placements. So they will be engaging with students in starting out in small groups and then working their way up to a whole group so that they can practice their instructional practices as well as classroom management and teaching their content areas. Then they will move to student teaching, which will be the very last semester of their undergraduate program, and we call that term 8 or semester 8. In that student teaching semester, we ask that the students attend a full week, which would include 5 days a week for the full 15-week semester. And again, in their placements, we ask that they keep a time card, and we ask the mentor teacher to report on the student's progress for at least 4 times a semester, which equates to about once a month. They'll give them formal feedback on their lesson, planning, their instructional practices, as well as professionalism in the field. They will have 2 formal teaching evaluations and 2 informal from their ASU faculty that's connected with that placement. So now we're going to talk about some field experience data, and Sarah's going to jump back in.
Perfect. Thank you, Tina. So I wanted to just take a quick moment to give you an idea of the scope of the placements that we complete. This data is from this spring 2024 semester. I'll highlight a couple of the numbers. So first, we completed about 2,200 placements for our students, and that includes those observations, the internship placements, and the student teaching placements. So we do placements at a very large scale. The majority of those placements were for students that were in that internship that Tina was talking about, although we also have a lot of students who are involved in student teaching. A good amount of those are actually graduate students. And then to look at the scale of the organizations that we're working with, the bottom 3 numbers, we worked with about 250 districts, and that is actually across the United States. The majority of the districts are in Arizona. However, because we have online graduate programs, we also secure placements for students who are outside of the state of Arizona in states all across the United States. We had about 1,600 mentor teachers who were hosting our students. Mentors technically can host more than 1 ASU student, and my husband is actually an example. He's a teacher. He hosts 11 of our ASU students. And so just giving everyone an idea of the scope that we're working with. Next slide, please. And I will kick us off here just to talk about some of the benefits of these placements. For observations, this is a very low time commitment for our mentor teachers. They are not completing an evaluation. They are agreeing to host the student, and then they sign off on the student's time card to verify that the student attended the placement. And we look at this as a really great way for ASU students to get to know our schools and districts, and for schools and districts to get to know our ASU students. It is really common that if a student has a positive experience, they will want to go back to that school. They'll want to go back to work with that mentor teacher. So for districts, it is possible that they can start working with a student in their second year of university and work with that student for multiple years, and then eventually hire that student once they're ready to graduate. I'll send it back over to Tina.
So in regards to the internships and student teaching, there again are a lot of the benefits that Sarah had just shared. But one of them is an actual leadership opportunity for the classroom teachers. They are able to be seen as an educational leader by training one of the pre-service teachers or multiple. It's also a really good way for the students to get to know those districts and schools and communities to see if that's someplace that they want to actually land for their career in the future. As Sarah shared before, we have a grow your own type of program where the students can get to know all of the common practices and rules and just the community vibe. And see if they want to work there when they are done with their program and graduate. And the K-12 students are the ones who are benefiting from this type of field experience placements, because if there's multiple adults in the classroom, the students have the opportunity to have access to more teachers in the classroom and have more adults. So they don't have to wait as long if the teacher is working with a small group or individual students that take up a little bit more time than others. They can actually raise their hand or go to one of the other teachers that's in the classroom. Next slide, please. So one of the things that is a super important piece of our program is co-teaching. Co-teaching kind of lends itself to what I was just talking about, is having more adults in the classroom. So all ASU student teachers and mentor teachers are trained in the 6 co-teaching models. On the little slide graphic on the right, you could see the 6 models. The research is done by Cook and Friend, and it dates back to 2004, but it's very relevant and very current today in today's classrooms. The teachers are trained in what types of co-teaching models could be represented throughout a school day. The most basic one is one teach, one observe, where the veteran teacher or the mentor teacher is teaching and the student from the college is observing. And we can go through all 6 of them and show different examples of where teacher placements should be within the classroom. Where is the classroom teacher, the mentor teacher? Where is he or she in the classroom? And then where would the ASU student be and what would they be doing? So it's very intentional models of using multiple adults in the classroom. So everyone is trained on that. And during observations, we actually notate who's doing what. And the ASU supervisor can recommend in that placement what other types of co-teaching models could be represented, and just giving examples for that ongoing coaching and training. Next slide, please. So integration and alignment with coursework. Again, we have worked very diligent about making the coursework embedded and showing up in those placement classrooms. We want the experiences that our students have to be relevant and timely. We offer field experience handbooks and addendums with very consistent expectations for the students as well as the mentor teachers. All of our courses have some component of what should be expected out in the field and in those K-12 classrooms. So I just listed 2 examples. In some of the early internships that Sarah was talking about, when they're doing observation hours, there could be just a intentional observation of a specific skill or strategy that's used in the pre-K through 12 classroom. And then the students will come back to the college classrooms and discuss and have discussion. And so the professor can be very intentional about what does the research show for these types of strategies, and why are they, being seen in the classrooms, what's the use of it, and so on. And then some of our later examples that we would have as a course integration would be for the students to actually go out and teach a lesson that they themselves have developed, maybe from a unit, or if it's just a single lesson plan. And then the students are asked to come back to the college classrooms and reflect on it. So there's various levels of the connections of coursework of what we're asking the students to do, but everything is extremely intentional and timely. And then the last little star on this slide, we ask all of the courses to utilize the same lesson plan template. And for the student teaching lesson evaluation, we're asking that the same lesson plan template be utilized. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure that students are able to plan a lesson from start to finish, from starting, making sure that they're addressing the state content standards, all the way up to how did they assess the student, what did they assess, and was everything aligned? So all of the courses are asked to use a very consistent language so that the students are not seeing from one course to the next different lesson plan templates and different philosophies on lesson planning. And the next slide, please.
All right, I am going to talk about the different roles that our key stakeholders have. And first, I want to talk about our stakeholders that are at ASU. So the stakeholder that has the most responsibility and really the biggest role, I would say, is the ASU student. This is the stakeholder who is attending the placement. They're responsible for completing their assignments. They are learning how to become a teacher. And they are collaborating with all of the other stakeholders who are here on the screen. They collaborate with their mentor teacher on a daily basis. If they are student teachers, they're also communicating with their faculty frequently. And I kind of think of our ASU stakeholders almost like the student is an actor on a stage, and then everyone else is behind the scenes, making sure that the student has what they need so that they are learning and so that they are doing well as they prepare to become a teacher. Placement coordinators are the fantastic team that I get to work with. And so our placement coordinators are ASU staff members who are responsible for securing the placement for the student. We do have to make sure that the placement is compliant. So that means that the placement has to meet ASU program requirements, and it also has to meet our Department of Ed requirements. So that is why it does require a bit of coordinating. Our placement coordinators are communicating with the student pretty frequently, and then they are also acting like problem solvers as things come up, either with the placement or with the student. Sometimes mentor teachers maybe get sick or they have a surgery planned, and so our coordinators would be able to step in and help make sure that the student who's attending the placement is able to get what they need. We do have supervising faculty who work really closely with our students. They are monitoring their progress. They're evaluating students. They're communicating really closely with mentor teachers who are there in person, who are watching the students' development. We have advisors on ASU staff who specifically are working with our students around their course plan. So if something comes up for the student where they have to withdraw from a course, or if they want to go in a slightly different direction, sometimes students want to add additional, what we call certification to their program. And advisors would help navigate that with the student. We also have a really unique team that provides what we would call wraparound services. So almost like an organization that can help solve multiple problems that a student is facing. They are called a coordinated care team. They work closely with students, and they're also working closely with additional stakeholders to help problem solve. So if a student, for example, maybe their car breaks down and they can't get to their placement, and they're also struggling to complete assignments, the coordinated care team would help problem solve around that and work with everyone who's involved. Next slide, please. So we have stakeholders who are at what we call the district level, which I believe are called resources for those of you who are in Georgia. For these stakeholders, the one who has the most responsibility is the mentor teacher. They are directly observing and working with our student on a daily or a weekly basis. They're coaching our student. We ask that they provide orientation for the student to the school, introduce them to relevant people that they're going to need to know, and they're also evaluating the student on their progress. Our team of placement coordinators do sometimes work with administrators, so a principal or an assistant principal is what we would call them, and sometimes administrators are selecting and approving the mentor teacher. So they are usually the person who is helping pick who's a good fit to mentor students on their campus. Sometimes we work directly with administrators. Sometimes we also work with who I would call a district representative. So this is a staff member who works at the school district, and sometimes they're like a liaison. So sometimes they will work with the administrator to secure mentor teachers and then communicate that with our team of placement coordinators. Every district is different, and sometimes there are additional steps that districts require of our students, and district representatives would help track that process. Next slide, please.
So the nature of mentorships is a very important piece to all of the teacher training that we have at the college. Collaboration is expected between the students and the mentor teachers out in the placements. So just to give you an idea of some of the collaboration that happens and when it's actually happening. So the internships and the observations that Sarah had mentioned earlier in the presentation, these collaborations happen weekly. So when the students are in the placement classrooms, they are talking with their mentor teachers, asking questions about what they're seeing in the classrooms. And some of the other collaborations that might be happening each week would be lesson planning and anything to do with students. So our student teachers, sorry, I won't go to student teachers yet. Our interns and observers would be asking about what's happening with the lesson planning in the classroom, maybe asking questions about some of the modifications or differentiations that's seen with the students in the classroom. So it's mostly just a question type of collaboration and explanation as to what's happening. When we get to the student teachers, which is that final semester, the collaboration is expected to happen daily so that the student teachers are able to really understand at a deeper level what is happening in the classroom. They are in the placement field 5 days a week full time, so that collaboration should be happening each day. And again, the types of collaboration that you might see is lesson planning, but there's a little bit more buy-in when the student teachers are actually completing or being a part of the completion of lesson plans. And understanding content standards, because sometimes that's new for the students, the student teachers, to be able to understand what the actual content standard means. So sometimes there's a little bit of a dissection that's led by the mentor teachers. Also making sure that what we are assessing the students is directly aligned to the overall standards and goals of the lesson. A lot of times there's a misalignment when students have a cute idea or they see something that they really want to do as an activity, and then they try it out, and then their mentor teacher can help coach them to see this is not exactly aligned to what your instruction would be. And anything to do with students, again, is another type of collaboration. But the other thing that they're going to see is the home and school communication. It's really important to help guide and train our student teachers on how to communicate with parents and guardians, because that's something that we can talk to them and teach them in the college classroom, but until they're actually sitting in front of a parent or actually communicating with the parent, a lot of our students are a bit terrified, you know, to actually stand in front of a parent when a parent is a little bit upset about something, how to handle and how to conduct themselves. So that's another type of collaboration that the student teachers will go through, and they also will go through parent-teacher conferences with their mentor teacher during their student teaching experience. Next slide, please. Some of the support that we offer for mentor teachers is, again, very timely. We don't want to tell them everything up front because a lot of it will be, you know, forgotten by the time, you know, month 2 or month 3 rolls around. They have to pull from what we told them a few months ago. So every mentor teacher is assigned an ASU faculty member who supports the entire unit in the classroom. So the ASU faculty member, if it's me, for example, I would be supporting that student teacher in the classroom each day. I'm not there every day, but I am accessible to them every day. If they need to call me, if they need to email me, we have a line of communication that's constantly flowing. But I'm also going to be assigned to the mentor teacher in the field. So if the mentor teacher has any issues or you know, any questions on training or coaching or some of our evaluation tools that we're using, I am that key person to be able to help what happens out in the field placements. I would also be expected to have regular communication with the mentor teacher, just to let them know of upcoming assignments the student might have in the field, any evaluation progress reports that we're asking them to conduct or fill out, and just overall coaching support. As I mentioned before, we have our ASU handbooks and addendums, which those are just our basic guidelines and policies for everybody in our programs. So the mentor teachers are able to reference any of those handbooks at any time, but there's also a live person like me that would be there for questions. And we do organize a monthly, go back, if you can go back one last bit. We do organize a monthly professional development opportunity for our mentors because some of them are new to coaching, and being a teacher in the classroom is a very different role than actually coaching an adult into the teaching profession. So we have those professional development opportunities, and a lot of it focuses around how to coach, how to have difficult conversations with people, that we revisit the co-teaching models. So there's lots of things to help support them as a coach. And then we also have beginning of the semester welcome meetings for mentor teachers, just to kind of give them the space and opportunities to ask questions of some of the things that they might have that's just been circulating with them. The conversation that we have is really important for all of our mentor teachers to feel supported by each other as well, because we're going to have different levels of coaches in those meetings, and some that have been a coach for many years and some that's brand new. So it's a really valuable conversation to have amongst the group. Next slide, please. Some of the feedback and evaluations that we're going to ask of our mentor teachers and ASU faculty are listed here. So the ASU faculty member is actually going to score the student teacher at least 4 times during the semester. So 2 actual formal observations where there's a full lesson plan, which is also evaluated, as well as the instructional practices. And then we also have 2 informal, which are about little snips of 10 to 15 minutes of teaching. And there is not a full lesson plan that is asked of the students during that time, but there is an explanation of what is it that you're teaching, what is it that you would like me to look for with this clip. ASU faculty uses an evaluation tool called the Aspiring Teacher Rubric, which there are 8 indicators. Just to give you an example of a couple of the indicators, one of the indicators is presenting instructional content. So it really focuses on what does the model look like of the content that's being taught to the students? Is there any modeling that's done? Is there concise communication that's happening during that instructional time? And another example of an indicator is engaging students and managing behavior. So we all know that having a well-maintained and well-managed classroom is one of the keys to being a successful teacher. So we give feedback on what it is that we're actually seeing in relation to those indicators, and what is it that we would give as feedback for coaching and improvement opportunities for the students. So again, those observations, we have at least 4 of them throughout one semester for the student teachers. 2 of them are formal and 2 of them are informal. And the mentor teachers are asked to provide feedback daily if possible, but at minimum weekly. And a lot of times that's just an informal coaching conversation and talking about, okay, what happened this week? What went well? What did you feel really confident about this week? And what are some areas that we can focus on for next week? So it's just a coaching conversation of reflection as well as next steps, and what are some of the goals that that student might have for the following week. And the evaluations that are done formally, they're also co-scored by the mentor teacher with the ASU faculty. And that's a really important piece to the whole coaching cycle. For me to be able to sit next to a mentor teacher and watch the same lesson, and I'm doing all of my expectations as an ASU supervisor, and then having that conversation with the mentor teacher after that lesson, just to kind of pulse and make sure that we are on the same page when it comes to what are we seeing in the instruction, what are we not seeing, so that they can get an idea of what I would be coaching the student teacher on, and I can get an idea of what they're seeing and what they're focusing on as well. Next slide.
All right, so I am going to provide an overview of how we do this, the logistics behind how ASU makes the field placements happen for students. I wanted to start off with, from the student's perspective, what the placement process is like. So essentially, the first 2 steps are where the placing itself is happening, and then 3, 4, and 5 is after the student has received the placement. So every semester, we ask students to complete what our office calls a placement request form. This is similar to a Google form. It has basic information that we need to help the student get the best placement possible. So we ask our students, for example, where are you going to be commuting from? Have you moved by chance? So that we know we're actually finding them a placement that they can get to. We ask students to give us their preferences, or if they have specific requests that they want to make. We ask students if there's any additional information that we need to know. Like, sometimes students will tell us, I don't have any transportation. I'm literally going to walk to my placement. Our team of placement coordinators will take that information and will do everything possible to get that student a school that they can walk to from their location. So in terms of when we start the placement process, we do start really early. So for example, for placements that are happening fall 2024, we sent this form to students in February. So halfway through the current semester is when we are planning for the next semester. Once our team gets that information, our placement coordinators are then working on finding the placement. So from the student's perspective, they're submitting that form, and then they have a period of time where they're waiting while our team is securing the placement. Once the placement is secure, the student gets an automated email that says the placement is ready, and they can view the information, meaning they can see what district they're at, what school they're at. They can see who their mentor teacher is and what grade level they'll be in. And we ask the student to take over from there. So the student is expected to email the mentor teacher to introduce themselves and then set a schedule for when they're going to start. The student attends the placement, and then if there are any issues that come up, we expect the student to reach out to their faculty or their placement coordinator. And in the next slide, I will go over what is happening behind the scenes. So in between the student submitting the form and then getting the placement, here's what the team that I work with is doing. The team is first requesting the placement, and there is a bit of research we have to do. We have to make sure that we know what the students' placement needs are. Some of our students have really specific needs because of their program. So we might need to request a placement that is in a preschool setting, that is a special education setting as well, in a very specific place in the Phoenix area. So our team works really hard to make sure that we're asking for the correct mentor teacher and the correct school placement. Once we receive the placement back from either the principal or the district representative, we do double check. We will review the placement information to make sure that everything is compliant. And then in the third step of the work that we do, we will enter the data for the placement onto our online system, and we will initiate the email that the student receives to get that placement. In the next slide, I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the logistics that we're working with. So in total, we have 21 full-time faculty who are supporting our students as they're in these placements. The team that I work with, excuse me, we have 11 placement coordinators. So that averages out to about 250 to 280 students that each coordinator is working with to secure their placement. There are 15 different programs that we are placing for, and that includes both graduate and undergraduate. And every district is different. Every school is different that we work with. So sometimes there are different processes that our coordinators have to navigate depending on where the placement is going to be. It is somewhat common for districts that are outside of Arizona to ask for resumes from our students. Sometimes districts want to interview, or principals want to interview the student to see if they're a good fit for their school. And our team of coordinators will help navigate that, will help let the student know what they need to do and set up times to make that happen. Our focus where we currently are is really on making sure that we can get high quality mentors. The data is showing us that if a student has a positive experience with their mentor, that the chances are much higher that that student is going to finish their program and get their degree, and that they're going to become a teacher. So that's really what our focus is. How can we get mentor teachers who are excited to work with our students and who are excited to help train the next generation of teachers? And next slide, please.
So lastly, we're going to talk about some of the common challenges that our students and or mentors face. As any student, I believe, will be the work and school balance. A lot of times the students take on a little bit too much with their outside personal life if they have another job that they are trying to work during their student teaching period or any of the other semesters. So trying to find that work and school balance is sometimes a challenge for both the students and the mentor teachers. Another thing that we are seeing is the readiness levels vary in students. Some students that we have never had any experiences at all working with children, working in school settings. So they are not as confident in front of the class, in front of groups. And then we have some students that have been working as an instructional aide or a teaching assistant for many semesters or many years, might have their own children, so their comfort levels are very different and varying. But that does play into the student teaching semester when some are ready to go right out of week 1 or week 2, and then some take a little bit more time to get and gain that confidence working in front of students. Another thing that we have found is working close in one space. sometimes there's some personality differences. We have management styles that might vary because of personality levels. So sometimes that is a little bit of an issue where the students might feel like, I can't try some of these things because I just don't want to step on their toes, and it's their classroom. So sometimes there's a little bit of a heightened personality difference to where the student might request a placement change. So it goes through a process with the team that Sarah works with, and they basically just sit down and talk with the student, first, if they're able to do that before a new placement is granted. And then just meeting expectations at performance levels, because we have such differing readiness levels. Some students are able to achieve their mastery levels that we have set for them, and others are not. So they require a bit more coaching in the field, and sometimes they even require a little bit more of an extended semester in order for them to reach those performance levels. So those are just some of the challenges that students and mentors face.
Great. Thank you so much for a very interesting presentation. I'm sure that there were lots of interesting points and ideas for our participants and attendees today to take back to their universities. I want to emphasize that the program is so well structured and so guided, but at the same time, it was great to see how ASU allows for some space, to customize it to the needs and interests of the schools and also of students. From my perspective also, and I'm sure it is the same observed, it's very interesting to see that schools are seeing the students, the ASU students, as helping hands to support the school students in the classrooms rather than as burden. And finally, this alignment between coursework and the field experiences was very interesting. And Tina, as you mentioned, there is this very close collaboration between mentor teachers and ASU faculty so that they coordinate what students are taught at the university and what is that they see in the classroom. So very interesting. And now we have questions coming. For example, we have the first question from Nino Petviashvili. She's from European University. So her question is about mentor teachers and has several angles there. First is, what are the other benefits in addition to them, seeing this as a leadership experience for mentor teachers? Do they have any financial incentives to become mentor teachers? And also, how many students would one mentor typically have assigned? I know that you already touched, even though she asked that before you spoke about it, about the professional development for mentor teachers. But if there is anything else you think that you would add, because that's also another interesting area for the Georgian audience, how the university supports and prepares mentor teachers for hosting students. So let's start with this question, whoever wants to answer, and then we have more coming. Thanks.
Yeah, I can start. So we do have a couple of additional financial benefits. So mentor teachers receive professional development hours. Mentors have to renew their teaching certification. And so those hours go towards them to be able to renew that certification. They get a certificate from us for a number of hours, depending on how many students they're hosting. Mentors also receive an ASU tuition waiver, which counts if they're taking an ASU class. They are able to go ahead and submit that to our cashier's office to waive a portion of their tuition fee, which is a huge benefit. It's something that my husband did when he was getting his master's degree. In terms of how many students, I would say most of our mentors are hosting one student. We do see mentors that will sometimes host a student teacher and an intern, or a student teacher and an observation student, But for the most part, mentors are hosting one student.
Mhm. Great, thanks. Another question is about this final semester. So you mentioned that there is this student teaching the final semester, the fourth year. Do they also take, do they also have coursework to do that during that final semester, or is it all about field experience and practicums at schools? And I don't know if Sarah or Tina, which, yeah, who wants to take this question?
It's a good question. I think it's a Tina question.
Tina, can you hear us? We may have some. Yeah, Tina. Mhm.
So the student teaching is an actual course, the student teaching experience. So that is mostly field work, but there is some coursework that is also expected of them, and that's meeting with their professor. At the moment, it's an online course that they're taking. So there is a Canvas shell that we create with assignments and expectations and due dates. They also have another 1-credit course, which is a professionalism series course. So it talks about really how to navigate through the first years of teaching, advocate for themselves, finding a support circle, those types of tools that I think most new teachers struggle with. And like we talked about before, finding that work-life balance. So it's a lot of information on them to help them through the first year, basically, of of their career, because it's a very, very rigorous and time-consuming career. So we don't want them to burn out. So we give them some tools ahead of time.
Great. Thank you. Here we have another question from Ketevan Jajwadze. This is about working with students with special needs. Probably there are, in the classrooms where student teachers are assigned, there are students who have special needs. For example, her question was specifically about dyslexia. So is there any guidance that you give to the mentor teachers and student teachers how to work together with students with special needs, how they distribute tasks among themselves, what kind of co-teaching model they employ, or is this that they would just decide themselves? And how, like, based on what you know, how would they handle this kind of situations, working with students with special needs during the student field
Can I
experience?
clarify this question? Is this meaning the college student with special needs or the PK-12 student with
Good
special?
question. Pre-K, K-12 student. But
So
if
we
you also want to comment on the college student, that would be also nice. But this question was about K-12 students with special needs.
So we have a special education program where students would go and learn all there is to know, not really all there is to know, because there's always still something to know, but really preparing them for the special education population. So then they would work in those settings and they would really work alongside a teacher who understands and who has experience working with the students with special needs. And then all of the other programs that we have courses along the way that will touch on some of these things. So we have graduates that would hold a bachelor's degree with special education and all of what's wrapped into that program. And then we also have the other courses that are in all of the other programs. So they at least have some knowledge of how to work with the students in the classroom. But to be honest with you, we can teach them all day long how to work with the students. And if this situation arises, here's some of the tools and strategies that you can use. But those field experiences are invaluable for the students. They finally can see what we're talking about in the classroom and how it's actually applied when you have a student with specific needs and how to actually help them and make them feel successful.
Mhm. Thank you. We have another question. This is about action research or any type of thesis type of work if students are required to do it, and for example, action research or some type of research, and if this is somehow related to their field experiences, do they have any kind of requirement like this to graduate from the BA program?
So from the undergraduate program, we do not necessarily have an actual action research criteria for them, but we do have those connected assignments and experiences that we're asking them to do. We have a coaching cycle and that we ask them to go through, which includes planning for it, execution, as well as reflection. So there's some pieces that we take from action research, but we don't actually have a full action research project for them.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you. And I think this is all. Just one more final question then. And I think this will also nicely conclude our presentation. How do you collect feedback from teachers, mentor teachers or students, faculty, to inform your program improvement? And what are some of the strategies in place to adapt this practicum program to the needs and new emerging needs and challenges that you have in the classrooms? And then this will be the last question for our presenters.
So we have the end of program surveys that we do ask the students to complete, no matter what program that they're in, whether it be elementary education, special education, secondary education, which would be the 6 through 12 certification grade levels. We do ask that they, complete those, and then we have faculty members that go over the research to kind of look at where are the concentrated areas that we're covering, at a decent rate, and what are some things that our graduates are not prepared to do or feel like they're not prepared to do. We also have course instructor feedback as well, so that each individual course will have a feedback section for the students to be able to give feedback on the instructor and, the content and the rigorous level of the course. And we also are, we've had some in the past, but we're going back, kind of doing some revisions on the students out in the field. How are they able to evaluate their mentor teacher in preparedness? Do they feel prepared? Is this a quality mentor for us to continue to use at the college? So we do have a lot of feedback pieces that are in place to be able to collect what students are feeling prepared with, what they're not feeling prepared, and so on. Sarah, did you want to add anything to that?
We have not surveyed our mentors before, but we're developing it. So this is a really timely question.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. This was really interesting, and I would like to thank you also on behalf of Chemonics International. As you know, ASU is implementing this project with the leadership of Chemonics International, USAID Educating the Future activity. So thank you also on behalf of all my fellow Georgians in Georgia who are now here. And I wish you a very good day and good night to the Georgians, because it's late, getting late evening in Georgia now. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.